More and more states and Canadian provinces are passing mandatory ignition interlock legislation. As a result, law enforcement can expect to encounter drivers in vehicles equipped with ignition interlock technology more frequently. To ensure these devices provide the highway safety benefit they are intended, it is critically important for officers to understand how to properly handle these encounters. Because ignition interlock laws can vary so much from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, this training video provides basic instruction that should be universally applicable to the AMVA community. But it is every officer's responsibility to become familiar with the laws of their jurisdiction, as well as the policies and regulations of their agency, before taking any enforcement action. In many jurisdictions, motorists arrested for drunk driving can apply for a special license that will give them full driving privileges as long as they have an ignition interlock device installed in their car. Law enforcement throughout North America will increasingly see ignition interlock devices during traffic stops. This video is designed to help you know what to do during the course of a traffic stop that involves an ignition interlock device or an ignition interlock license. During the installation process, the subject should be properly trained on how to use the device.
So now that it's ready, go take a deep breath, nice and steady. Keep going, softer, softer, nice and steady. Good, keep going, good. Once you feel the click, it's done. So see, you don't have to blow hard, just steady all the way through.
There are several things that a police officer should be aware of with an ignition interlock system. Do you know what it means when a car drives past you and its horn is sounding in a regular interval? Many ignition interlocks are also hooked up to the vehicle's horn when they are installed because many programs require periodic retests.
Retest intervals differ by jurisdiction, but if a person is retesting 10 or 15 minutes after the vehicle's initial start and they are above the ignition interlock set point, which is 0.025 in most jurisdictions, that's an indicator that the vehicle is equipped with an ignition interlock device and the driver failed the retest. Probably because they had someone else start the vehicle for them initially and they are trying to get home before the retest.
There are many manufacturers of ignition interlock devices, but they all have a similar look. These devices have several illuminated lights on them and are approximately 6 inches long and 3 to 4 inches wide, with a cord that runs into the steering column area. Some devices may be equipped with cameras, which can be used to investigate suspicion of circumvention, such as another person blowing into the device for them. So, you've just stopped a car and they hand you an 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper or other document that does not look like a jurisdiction-issued driver's license. And you may be wondering, what is that? Look to see if it says Ignition Interlock Driver's License. Regardless of what the driver's license looks like, it should have their name on it and their physicals and their driver's license number. In many jurisdictions, the ignition interlock license is only used during the subject's suspension or revocation period, invoked from a DUI arrest. And after the suspension period, they are issued a standard driver's license that has an ignition interlock status for the court and/or Department of Motor Vehicle mandated period of time. After identifying that the driver has an ignition interlock license or ignition interlock status on their license, make sure the vehicle has an ignition interlock device installed. If they do not have the device installed, then they should be cited under the appropriate statute in your jurisdiction.
It doesn't matter if the car is owned by or registered to their wife, a friend, or anyone else. The ignition interlock device has to be in the vehicle they're driving.
There may be specific exceptions regarding operation of a vehicle with an ignition interlock installed. The driver should be able to provide documentation regarding the exception. Officers should become familiar with the exceptions allowed under their jurisdiction's law and how they're documented. Once you have identified that the vehicle has an ignition interlock device installed, you need to determine if the vehicle is working properly. To do this, ask the subject to turn off their vehicle. Some jurisdictions may require that you wait for a period of time, such as 2 minutes, for the device to reset before they restart it. If the subject successfully starts the vehicle, then proceed with the original reason for the stop.
Sometimes on ignition interlock devices, they can be a little sensitive, so they may blow into it and it may fail them. or they may not have blown into the device properly. Each device has its own anti-circumvention, which could be a hum tone or a suck back, so they have to blow into the device and they have to suck back into the device, which detects breath patterns, and then it'll actually let them blow into the device. If they're nervous with you there, they may cause them to do that. So you may allow them a second try to go ahead and try and start their vehicle to ensure that it's just not them being nervous and the device isn't working properly.
It's not letting me start the vehicle right now.
Is there a reason for that? Did you blow properly into it, or
I'm
are
not
you
really
familiar with
sure.
it? Did you just get the device?
I'm a little familiar with it.
Okay.
I'm just not really sure right now why I didn't pass.
Okay. Well, we're going to wait a couple seconds here, and then I'm going to have you try it again for me, okay? If they blow into it the second time and they failed that second time, you may want to start investigating them for driving under the influence. They may have just left the bar, somebody blew into that device for them. They waited that 10 minutes, they blew that second time for them, and now they're trying to drive home before the device asks them to blow that third time into the device to keep going. So you want to look for the odor of intoxicants, look at their eyes, you're going to look for all the indicators you would look for an impaired driver, because there's a good indication that they could possibly be impaired at that point.
If you have a subject that appears impaired, but they are able to start their vehicle, then this is an indicator that something is wrong with the ignition interlock device.
Many people who have ignition interlock devices want to try to find a way to circumvent them so they can start their car without having to blow in the device, be able to go out and drink, and still be able to drive. They will use anything from charcoal filters and put them on the device where the mouthpiece should be, to a mattress air compressor to try to simulate the human breath and blow into the device. Or they actually go and disconnect the device, but make it look like it's connected when it really isn't. These are some of the ways they try to circumvent the device and the system.
Would you do me a favor? Could you just kind of give that cord that goes down there a few tugs, just kind of pull it out for me in the ignition there? Pull a little harder right down there. Just take that and pull it out for me. Just keep pulling. Oh, it looks like that's not even hooked up there, sir.
If you find an ignition interlock that is circumvented, then you should properly document the evidence. Take a picture of the device that shows how it was installed and what device it is. Document the serial number of the device. The head of most ignition interlock devices can be easily unplugged and submitted as evidence with your case. They should be cited for circumventing an ignition interlock device if your jurisdiction has an applicable statute. It's important for law enforcement to be aware that ignition interlock devices record all the activity of that device in a database that is downloaded during regular device checks.
Recently we had a case in Eastern Washington where an individual was killed. They had had an ignition interlock device installed in their vehicle 2 months before. So we pulled the history on. We found that that person had been driving impaired, or attempting to drive impaired, several times up to the point where he had his interlock taken off. He actually blew a .15 and a .17. So if you have a case where somebody has an ignition interlock on your car, we can pull that database and we can look at their history, their driving history, to see what their circumstances are. Are they learning from that device, or are they not learning from the device? Are they still continuing to try to drive? Are they going out and drinking? We can tell all those things from that database.
Once you've determined that a subject has an ignition interlock license or ignition interlock status, then you need to first determine if the ignition interlock device is installed in the vehicle. The most common exception to not having it installed is if they are driving an employer vehicle and they are in possession of proper documentation substantiating that exception. Next, ask the subject to turn his vehicle off. Wait at least 2 minutes and then have them restart the vehicle. If it restarts successfully, then proceed with the original reason for the stop. If the vehicle does not start, then start investigating for driving under the influence or circumvention of the ignition interlock device. For additional information, contact Brian Orsino, AMVA Director of Law Enforcement.